Hi everyone, it's Christine here from Christine's Stampin' Spot. I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I want to apologize for not having as many videos as I usually have up the last week or two. This is the last couple weeks of summer, so we're trying to cram in as many last-minute summer activities as we can. My almost 6-year-old turns 6 next week, and then the week after that he starts school. So that's why I've been a little bit scarce, but I will get back to regular posting very soon. So today's card uses the new Pop of Petals stamp set from Stampin' Up!, which has a coordinating punch that goes with it as well. Now you can purchase the stamp and punch separately, but if you purchase them together as a bundle, you save 10%. And it's very cost effective, I think. It's a great price point for this. As you can see on the stamp set, you have several different flower options. And then you also have a butterfly option, which I think really leads to the versatility of this punch and stamp set, that the same exact punch can cut out flowers for you or a butterfly. So it's really kind of a neat idea there. So this is the card that I have created today, and I did use a couple different techniques, a couple different die sets, a couple different stamp sets, along with the Pop of Petals stamp set to create this. But it's not very difficult at all, and it'll come together really easily once we get started. So the first thing that we want to do is stamp our flowers and get those punched out and taken care of. I've already stamped and punched out most of them to save time for the video, but I'm going to go ahead and do 2 of them now just to show you for demonstration purposes. You can also see from the card we're going to be doing some embossing, both wet embossing with some copper embossing powder there. I think the camera's picking that up quite nice. And some dry embossing with this panel here in the back. And then our colors today are going to be Petal Pink, Berry Burst, and Soft Seafoam with some copper thrown in. As you can see, I've got some copper foil paper here and then the embossing as well. All right, so because I wanted sort of a vintagey feel to this card, I decided instead of stamping on Whisper White cardstock for the flowers, I would stamp on Very Vanilla today. So you just need a scrap paper of Very Vanilla. You don't need a full sheet or anything, but you would be stamping, we're gonna be using this flower here and this flower here today for this card. This one's going to be in our lighter color, which of course is our powder pink. And this image is going to be in our darker pink color, which is our Berry Burst. And these are 2 in colors, and these in colors will be going away in May at the end of our May 2019. So they're still around for a while. We're also going to be using this image here for just a little bit of a greenery on the Soft Seafoam panel. So we're going to go ahead and stamp 2 flowers. Like I said, I've already done a bunch of others to save some time, but I do want to show you how this works. So you do have your punch here. Before I stamp things down when I'm using a punch, I like to turn the punch over and figure out the way that the image is acclimated on the back of the punch, and that will help me determine kind of how to stamp it down. And as you can see here, you have a little 2 different leaves have a little notch in them. As you can see in the stamp set, they have this little kind of groove in 2 of the leaves. These 2 leaves are kind of more straight, and then these 2 leaves have a little curvature to them. Can you see that there and there? So you just want to make sure that when you stamp your flower down, one of these curvy leaves is in the right corner. You don't have to do it that way. I've just found that it does save some time, because when I first started doing it, I wasn't paying attention and I was just stamping my flowers along and along, and I realized I was having to cut my paper to get it to fit in the punch. So it doesn't mean that your project's ruined if you don't do it this way, but it does save a little bit of time. So I'm going to grab the Berry Burst, and we're going to stamp this flower first, because this is going to be our darker colored flower. So I'm just kind of looking at the back of the flower and making sure I have it lined up how I want it here. And then I'm going to go ahead and stamp it down. And again, this is on Very Vanilla cardstock with Berry Burst ink. Isn't that pretty? It's such a pretty, pretty flower there. I just love it. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this one off the block. We can close up our Berry Burst, and I'm going to grab the powder pink. And I'm going to grab the other flower now from the stamp set. And I'm just going to place it on the back here so that it's how I want it. Let's see. Yeah, we're gonna want it like that, I think. Because sometimes it's a little, a little difficult to line it up exactly how I want it. So that's gonna go, yeah, okay. So now we're just gonna go ahead and ink this up in our powder pink ink here. And then we're just gonna go ahead and stamp this down, like so. And there we go. Both of our flowers are now stamped. Just cleaning this off really quick. We can close up our powder pink ink, and then I'm going to show you quickly how you would punch these out. And as you can see, with a very vanilla behind it, it's more of a vintagey look, isn't it? It's not quite that stark white. These also obviously look beautiful with white behind them as well. But for this particular card design, I just wanted that more vintagey, softer color. And that's why I went with a very vanilla today. So now all you have to do is simply line this up with your punch. So you have kind of even space around all the petals, and then you simply punch it down. And then we're going to do the same thing, and see how easy it is since I have it lined up correctly. I don't have to sort of cut my paper or turn my punch weird. So it does help to sometimes look at the back of your punch, see how it's acclimated, and then make sure you're stamping it down that way. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so now I'm just simply lining this up, looking through my punch here, and then we're just going to stamp it down. I mean, punch it down. All right, so now we are done with our punch. So we can go ahead and set that aside because again, I went ahead and punched a bunch of these beforehand. So here's some that I punched beforehand. And so here we have, it's gonna kind of look like this with 3 up top there, and then 2 light pinks, or 1 dark pink and 2 light pinks at the bottom. Now to make them kind of curvy, what I did is I just took my bone folder and I just kind of, like if you were curling ribbon on a packaging or something, I just sort of put my thumb against the leaf and pulled it up a little bit with the bone folder, and it made the leaves come up just a little bit. So I'm going to do those on the 2 we just stamped here. And now another thing that I want to do before I set the flowers aside for a moment is, as you can see on the finished card, it's very subtle, but it does show up in person. Behind each of the darker pink flowers, I wound some copper thread. Can you see that there? Again, it's very subtle. It's there as well. And so I've already done that on this one that I did before coming on camera. Again, very subtle, just a little tiny bit sticking out. It's just something that I like to do on a lot of my projects. I just think it adds a little bit of texture and it's just kind of fun. So I'm going to quickly do that to this darker pink one that we just stamped, and I'm going to show you how to do that super fast. So all I'm going to do is turn it over, and I'm going to grab a dimensional to put right in the middle, pull the backing off, and then I'm going to put 2 mini dimensionals on either side on the petals as well. And then all we're going to be doing is grabbing some of our copper metallic thread, which comes in a spool like this. You guys know, if you've seen any of my videos, how much I love this thread. I add it to a lot of my online card classes. I'll put it in your packets. It's just something fun that I like to work with. And it's also very inexpensive. You get a lot on a roll for something like $4, I want to say. So I've just wound a bunch around my first 2 fingers here, and I'm just going to slide my fingers out. I'm going to try to slide my fingers out of the little circle that I've created here. And then I'm just going to be sticking this down to the back here. I'm going to spread it out a little bit and then stick it down to the back on top of our dimensionals that we've stuck down. And there's going to be sort of a little end here that's going to be a little crazy, so I'm just going to kind of loop the little end here around and stick it on dimensionals, and then you can also just trim it off. And there we go. Let me bring this up to the camera so you can see. Again, it is super, super subtle. It's just that little tiny bit of thread just sticking out the very back. In person, it really is quite pretty, and it definitely noticeable. On camera, it doesn't pick up as much as I wish it did, but you will be able to see pictures of this card, and so you'll be able to see it a little bit better, I think, in the pictures. So I will have a link to my blog in the description box of this video below, and that will have pictures of close-ups of this card. Okay, so now looking back at the finished card, we have all of our flowers inked, punched, and ready to go. And we've wound a little copper thread behind the two larger ones. So now what I want to do is create the panel that everything is going to sit on. So what I used is this large die here from our new Stitched Seasons framelit dies. And I want to talk about this for just a quick second. These dies are only available while supplies last for the month of August. And this is August 2018. They coordinate beautifully with the Blended Seasons stamp set, which is also only available while supplies last in August of 2018. However, the dies in and of themselves are beautiful and great for so many different cards. You can use them with so many different stamp sets. So I went ahead and used this particular die, and as you can see, there's stitching on it. And I went ahead and cut this piece out from soft seafoam cardstock. And as you can see, there's stitching all the way around. And what's really neat is there's also outer stitching. So this is the piece that I cut this out from, and as you can see, there's stitching along this as well. So I'm saving this because I can use this as a frame on another project. Does that make sense? So you actually get the negative space with beautiful stitching as well as the positive space with beautiful stitching. So I used this die, and then I also used these two dies here from this die set and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, but just to cut some copper foil paper out from here and here. So a very versatile die set. I just wanted to show this to you guys really quick. I love it, especially these stitched shapes here. Oh my gosh, love them, love them. All right, so I went ahead and to save time, I already went ahead and cut this out. Now what I want to do is I want to add some greenery to this, just slightly. It's very subtle, as you can see on the finished card here. There's just a little hint of green leafery, if that's not even a word, green leaf, I don't know, coming out from behind up here and down here. Can you guys see that? I hope you can see that. Right there and right there. Okay. And so all I did for that is I'm just going to grab a piece of scratch paper just in case I go off the paper a little bit. I'm going to grab my soft seafoam ink pad. And then I'm going to grab this image here from the stamp set. So just this kind of long leafy image. I just got ahead and stuck it on my block. And I know that I'm going to have my flowers in the corners here and here. So I'm going to have a little leaf coming out this way and coming up this way, if that makes sense. And hopefully when I stamp it down, you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to go ahead and ink this little green leafy thing up in my soft seafoam, and then it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm sort of just guessing a little bit. I'm going to put one right there, and I'm going to put one right here, like so. Okay, super easy, super, super easy. Now, the next thing that I want to do, I can go ahead and close up the soft seafoam. We're done with that. And I am going to do a little bit of embossing. Let me bring the finished card back over to show you. I have some little kind of dotty splatter of copper embossed look all around this panel. To do that, I simply used an image from an older stamp set, but it's still current in the catalog, called Timeless Textures. This is a must-have stamp set, in my opinion, if you like to do vintage or grungy look to your cards sometimes, or to your projects. And I just used this little splotchy image right here. So let me show you how you do that. The first thing that you want to do is you want to grab your embossing buddy. The point of an embossing buddy is once I stamp my image with the Versamark ink and then pour the embossing powder over it, embossing powder will stick to things that aren't just the Versamark ink, like your fingerprints, if you don't use the embossing buddy. So all you have to do is use the embossing buddy and just do a couple swipes over your cardstock with it. And what this will do is make sure that that embossing powder only sticks to the Versamark ink. So wherever you've stamped the Versamark ink is where that embossing powder is going to stick, nowhere else. Now I'm going to grab my Versamark ink, which is a watermark ink pad, and I'm going to grab that image that we talked about here from the Timeless Textures stamp set. And I'm just going to ink it up in the Versamark here, and I'm just going to stamp it willy-nilly wherever I feel like it. Now you're probably not going to even be able to see very well where I'm stamping it down, because it is such a watermark type ink that it's very, very light. But once this embossing powder goes on and is heated, you will be able to see it, and it's absolutely gorgeous. So I'm not going crazy. I just stamped it a few times there, maybe 4 times, 5 times. I'm going to go ahead and close up my Versamark ink, and then I'm going to bring over my Stampin' Up! Copper embossing powder. And I just pour the little bottles when they come into these Ziploc type containers here. And I just use a regular spoon to kind of spoon it onto the paper here. So now I'm just going to simply sprinkle this embossing powder over where I stamped these little splotchy splotches. All right, let me just get over here a little bit better. All right, and then you just want to turn it over and kind of lightly tap the excess off back into your container. And so when I turn it back over now, you can see that embossing powder has just stuck to where I stamped. But I do need a little bit more up here. I didn't get this quite fully coated up here. So let me fix that. Okay, much better. All right, now you're gonna grab your heat tool. And this is the Stampin' Up! Heat tool. By the way, there are two different degrees of heat on your heat tool. The first, it says number 1. The number 1 notch is really just if you're wanting to set your ink, maybe you're stamping on a window sheet or something like that. When you're embossing, you always want to push it up to number 2. So this is going to be kind of loud, but you want to get your heat gun going here. And then you're simply going to melt this embossing powder, and when we're all done, it's going to be so incredibly beautiful. And I kind of like to move my gun around until it starts melting so I don't burn an area or something. I just find this works well for me. But let's see here. There it starts to go. Hopefully, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it change on camera. I hope so, because it's so fun to watch. You know, I first started stamping, gosh, I'm 37 years old now. Can't believe I just admitted that. And I remember starting to stamp with my mom when I was 12. And we went to Ben Franklin at the time, which was a craft store, kind of like Michael's, but much smaller than Michael's. Just a little, it was a chain, but it wasn't super big. And we went and bought some stamps, and they had this stuff called embossing powder. So we bought it, and we didn't have heat tools back then, or heat guns back then, so we had to stand over the stove with the burner on, holding our paper over it, trying not to catch the house on fire while the embossing powder melted. So those are really fun memories for me. But anyway, as you can see, now it's nice and embossed, and it's all shimmery and shiny in that pretty, pretty copper color. And Stampin' Up! Has lots of embossing powder colors, and I usually lean towards silver, gold, and copper are my favorites, aside from, of course, plain white, but the copper is exquisite. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and put my flowers around where I want them. So what I did is I positioned the darker colored flower down first on either side, because it sort of was the center of the collage, if you will. So I'm gonna put one here and one here. No right or wrong to how you do this. However you want to arrange your flowers is perfectly correct. I'm just sort of just doing what I think looks visually pretty, but there is no right or wrong answer to this. So now I'm gonna just sort of build the rest of the flowers along here, and I'm gonna stick that pink, light pink one there. And I'm just using dimensionals, if I didn't mention it already, on the backs of my flowers here. Because I'm not adding the copper metallic thread to all of the flowers, one regular size dimensional will be all that you need for the other flowers. I'm gonna stick this one down here, like so. Maybe we can move this one just a little bit. Like there, yep, that looks good. Okay, we'll stick that one there. And then we just have 2 more to do up top here in this upper left corner. So stick a dimensional down, peel the backing off, and there we go. And then one more, and then we are done with this part. Okay, so this one's just gonna kind of tuck under here, like so. And now we have this really pretty little collage of these flowers. Isn't that pretty, guys? So super simple and easy to do. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do is start to put this card together. So what I did is I went ahead and cut a piece of powder pink cardstock into a standard A2 size card base. This one was just cut at 11 by 4¼ scored at 5½, so it's a top fold. You may want to put a piece of Whisper White cardstock inside to write your message on. It's a light pink though, so you probably could get away without doing that. I then cut a piece of Berry Burst cardstock at 4 by 5¼ and then I ran it through my Big Shot with this gorgeous tufted textured impressions embossing folder. It's kind of hard to see the embossing folder because there's a glare there, but this is what it looks like when it comes out, and it is so textured and beautiful. Look at that. So we're just going to go ahead and adhere that to the top of our lighter pink card base. So we'll just use regular adhesive for that, and we can get rid of our scratch paper now. So let me just get some adhesive on the back of this. Because it's embossed, I always like to put kind of extra on dry embossed panels just to make sure that they stick down nice and good. Now we're just going to center the Berry Burst on top of the powder pink card base here, like so. And then what we're going to do is we can close that up, get that nice and stuck down, and then we are going to take this panel and pop it up with some dimensionals and just simply center it on the top of the card base. So I'm just going to grab some dimensionals here and just start kind of sticking them down. We get so many dimensionals in a pack that I'm really not very frugal with mine, so I'm going to put several on the back of this so I have even coverage. You wouldn't have to put this many. I just kind of err on the side of caution, and when I'm popping something I try to put a bunch of them on, because when I send it through the mail I don't want it to get kind of warped or bent, but you can certainly use as many as you like or as few as you like. So I'm just going to center this now in the middle of the card front here, like so. Now, if I bring the final card over, you can see I have this sentiment here. This thank you sentiment comes from the Abstract Impressions stamp set. I have several videos on YouTube as well as an online card class using this set. It's one of my favorites. But for today, I just used a little thank you sentiment. So all I did is stamp that with Versamark ink onto the Berry Burst cardstock, and I embossed it with the copper embossing powder. Same thing that we did with the embossing powder on this, we just used a sentiment stamp set instead of the little splotchy. To save time, I went ahead and already did that because it's the same exact technique as the embossing we already did. I added some dimensionals on the back and a bunch more copper thread, as you can see, very subtle, but I wound a bunch of copper thread behind it as well. Same way that we did it with the flowers. And then we're just gonna stick our little thank you sentiment about right here. And we'll just have it going across the panel. I also made a little notch in it, or a little banner end. I gave it a little banner punch end using the triple banner punch from Stampin' Up. Now, it's called the triple or three-step, or I forget honestly what it's called. On my blog will be a link to all the products used to create this card. So the right name will be there, I promise, but it has 3 different sizes in the barrel here that you can put through. This isn't one of those sizes. You can really feed any size paper through here. All you have to do is look through the back. Let me show you. Just look through the back and I can punch, you know, any size that I want, even if it's not a designated size for the barrel. So that's what I did for this. I just punched the little banner punch at the bottom there to give it a little banner ticket end to the bottom of the sentiment panel. All right, and then just for some final fun, I added some of these, as I talked about before, some of these really pretty little filigree images cut from some copper foil paper. And again, I used these from the limited edition Stitch Season framelits. You get 2 of these dies in the package, which is great because you don't have to run, you know, 1 through the Big Shot every time. You get, you know, 2 with 1 pass of your Big Shot, which is very helpful. So all I'm going to do for these, I am going to bring my scratch paper back over super quick, and I'm just going to take a little Zig glue pen and add a little bit of this glue on the back, and then I'm going to stick it down. So I'll have one on the bottom left corner, and I like to set an acrylic block on top just to help it stick down when I use this glue. And then here's the other one cut out of the copper foil paper. I'm going to do the same thing, just turn it over and put some of this glue on the back, and then we'll simply stick it to the top here. And again, this panel that we're sticking it to is dry embossed, so you really want to put some weight on it for a moment just so that glue can attach to the paper. So I just have some blocks on there for just a minute. It only takes a second. While that's drying, I'm going to grab some Stampin' rhinestones, and we're just going to add a couple of these for a finishing touch. So we can remove our blocks now, and I am going to go ahead and put, can remove the scrap paper as well. I just chose to use 3 on this one. I put one up here, one here. Doesn't matter where you put these whatsoever. Anywhere you want is correct. That's all I did for this card. So that's it, guys. That is how easy this card is to put together. Now the video is pretty long because there's a lot of different steps involved, and but it's not hard. None of this is hard to do. So this is it, guys. This is this beautiful card. I really hope that you enjoyed this video today on how to put together this kind of more fun vintagey look. A lot of my cards are a lot more simple and fun and cutesy, but sometimes it's fun to sort of do a different style for a change. So that's what this one is. So I hope you enjoyed it. This is, again, using the Pop of Petals stamp set and coordinating punch. Thank you guys so much, as always, for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will catch you in the next video, and make sure to check back every Tuesday for my announcement on what that week's online card class will be. Thanks so much again for stopping by, and I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.